Capricorn, take a breath. If you found this message, it is not random. There are moments in life when your light grows so steady, so undeniable, that it begins to disturb the quiet fears of others. You're not louder, you're not trying to prove anything, you're simply rising. And somewhere close to you, closer than you realize, two women feel it. They smile, they nod, but inside, something tightens because your growth reminds them of what they avoided becoming. This message is not here to create fear, it's here to sharpen your vision. Before we go any further, write this in the comments to receive this message fully. I see clearly now. Stay with me, Capricorn, because once you recognize the energy around you, you'll understand why your rise was never meant to be stopped, only tested. Capricorn, listen to me for a moment. There is a season in your life when your light stops asking for permission. It doesn't flicker anymore. It doesn't soften itself to make others comfortable. It becomes steady, grounded, unapologetically real. And that's when things begin to shift around you. You may not notice it at first because you're not doing anything differently on the surface. You're not louder. You're not showing off. You're not trying to be seen. You're simply standing in who you've become. And for some people, that quiet confidence feels unsettling. Not because you did something wrong, but because your growth forces them to look at the parts of themselves they've been avoiding for years. You see, Capricorn, your rise is not aggressive. It's not flashy. It's earned. It carries the weight of discipline, of patience, of nights when no one clapped for you, of mornings when you kept going anyway. And that kind of light does something powerful. It reflects. It reflects truth back to the people around you. And not everyone is ready to see their own reflection clearly, so they smile, they nod, they say the right things. But inside, something tightens, because your steadiness reminds them of where they settled. Your forward movement reminds them of the chances they talked themselves out of. Your courage reminds them of the version of themselves they once dreamed of being. And here's the part most people don't talk about. The ones who feel this discomfort are rarely strangers. They're often familiar, comfortable, close enough to know your story, close enough to have shared your laughter, close enough to have leaned on your strength when they needed it most. That's what makes it confusing, because you don't feel hostility. You feel something subtler, a shift in energy, a heaviness after certain conversations, a silence where encouragement used to be. You walk away wondering why something feels off even though nothing was said. That's not your imagination. That's your intuition, learning a new language. Capricorn, when your light matures, it stops attracting everyone. It starts revealing everyone. And this is where discernment is born, not the kind rooted in suspicion, but the kind rooted in clarity. The kind that allows you to see who can walk beside you in this season and who can only watch from the edges. This isn't about judgment, it's about alignment. It's about understanding that not every smile carries support. Not every presence carries good intention. Not every familiar face is meant to have access to your becoming. And that realization can feel heavy at first, because you are loyal, deeply loyal. You give your time generously. You protect the people you care about. You stay longer than most would. So, when your spirit begins to notice that some connections feel draining instead of nourishing, it can feel like grief. But there is also relief here, because clarity creates space, and space invites peace. Take a breath here. Let this land gently. Nothing is being taken from you. You are simply being shown what no longer belongs. And as you sit with this awareness, as you listen to the quiet signals your spirit has been sending all along, you'll begin to understand why this moment in your life feels both unsettling and strangely empowering. Because once you see clearly, you can never unsee. And what unfolds from here will change how you move, how you protect your energy, and how you rise with even greater strength than before. Capricorn, there is someone close to you. So close that if I said her name out loud, your body might react before your mind does, not with fear, with recognition. She doesn't stand across the room. She sits beside you, sometimes laughs with you, sometimes checks in on you, sometimes tells you she worries about you, and that's what makes this so delicate. Because on the surface, nothing feels wrong. Her voice is soft. Her tone sounds caring. She uses words like, "Be careful. Take your time. I just don't want you to get hurt." And part of you appreciates that. Of course you do. You've always respected concern. You've always valued loyalty. You've always been the one who listens. But there's a moment. a quiet one, usually after you share something important, a goal, a plan, a door that's starting to open for you. And in that moment, something shifts. Her smile holds just a second too long. Her encouragement arrives, muted, not absent, just thinner than it should be. You feel it afterward, not during. After. When you leave the conversation feeling heavier than when you entered, when your excitement settles lower in your chest, when your confidence feels adjusted downward, that's the part most people miss. Because this energy doesn't attack, it redirects. It wraps limitation in kindness. It calls fear protection. It disguises comparison as concern. She doesn't want you harmed. That part is true. But she wants you safe in a way that keeps her comfortable, safe enough not to outgrow the dynamic, safe enough not to widen the gap, safe enough that she doesn't have to sit alone with the question your growth asks her. What if I could have done more? And Capricorn, this is where your heart comes in. Because you're not quick to doubt people. You give the benefit of the doubt. You hold space. You stay longer than necessary. So you tell yourself, she means well. She's just cautious. She's just practical. But practicality doesn't drain your spirit. Love doesn't make you feel smaller. Care doesn't dim your fire. If something leaves you consistently tired, consistently second-guessing, consistently shrinking your vision, it's asking for something in return. And that something is your momentum. This isn't betrayal, not yet. It's misalignment. It's two people standing at different edges of growth, pretending they're still walking side by side. And here's the truth I want you to hear clearly, without judgment, without blame. You don't need to confront her. You don't need to expose anything. You don't need to harden your heart. You only need to notice what happens to your energy when you share your becoming. Because awareness changes everything. Once you see the pattern, you stop handing over the raw parts of your dreams. You protect what's still forming. You speak selectively. You move quietly, not out of fear, out of respect for your own process. And as you do that, something subtle begins to rearrange itself. Conversations shift. Distance grows naturally, no drama, no collapse, just clarity. And in that clarity, you begin to understand why not everyone who started with you can walk where you're headed. Not because they're bad, but because your path is asking for a different frequency now. And as you settle into that knowing, as you feel the steadiness return to your chest, you'll notice how much lighter it feels to move forward without carrying someone else's quiet fear alongside your own strength. Capricorn, there's something important you need to notice. Not about her, about what happens inside you when she speaks. She doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't criticize you openly. She doesn't tell you that you can't do it. If she did, you would recognize it immediately. Instead, her words arrive gently, almost tender. Just be careful. Don't rush. You've already come so far. Why risk it now? And for a moment, they sound reasonable. You nod, you listen, you respect the concern. But later, when the room is quiet again, when you're alone with your thoughts, something doesn't feel right. Your vision feels smaller, not destroyed, just reduced. Like a window that was open wide has been pulled halfway shut. That's how limitation works when it wears kindness. It doesn't push you back, it slows you down, it doesn't say no. It asks, are you sure, until certainty starts to wobble. Capricorn, this is not love. Love expands you. Love strengthens your spine. Love leaves you clearer than before. What you're feeling is fear, but it isn't yours. It's the fear of someone watching you move toward a life they secretly don't believe they could handle themselves. So they try to anchor you, not because they want to hurt you, but because your movement creates distance they don't know how to bridge. And here's the subtle part. She doesn't need you to fail. She just needs you to stay close enough that your growth doesn't challenge her sense of safety. That's why the energy feels heavy. You don't leave the conversation angry, you leave it tired. You don't feel attacked, you feel slowed. Your excitement dims. Your ideas feel less urgent. Your courage pauses for permission. And Capricorn, your soul was never designed to ask permission from someone else's fear. That's why your body reacts first. You feel it in your chest, in the quiet resistance, in the way your spirit leans back instead of forward. This is discernment forming, not suspicion, not bitterness, just awareness. You're beginning to understand that not everyone who cares about you knows how to support your becoming. And that doesn't make them bad, it makes them human. But it does require something from you now. It asks you to protect the tender parts of your vision, to stop explaining your dreams to people who respond with caution instead of curiosity. It asks you to move a little quieter. Not smaller, quieter. Because what's growing inside you doesn't need commentary while it's still taking shape. And here's where the healing comes in. You are not abandoning anyone by choosing yourself. You are not betraying loyalty by honoring your momentum. You are simply learning that your path demands a different kind of companionship now. One that doesn't flinch when you rise. One that doesn't soften your fire. One that doesn't ask you to stay where you are so they don't have to face where they're not. Take a breath here. Let the weight lift. You don't need to confront. You don't need to explain. You don't need to justify. Your clarity will do the work for you. And as you carry this understanding forward, as you listen more closely to how your energy responds instead of what words sound like on the surface, you'll begin to notice that this awareness is preparing you to recognize another pattern, another presence, another kind of comparison that watches you from a different distance. And when that awareness arrives, you'll meet it with a steadiness that feels even more grounded than before. Capricorn, there is another presence you should be aware of. She doesn't stand as close. Sometimes she's not even in the room, but you feel her anyway. She watches from a distance, sometimes from across an office, sometimes from within a family circle, sometimes from a past that hasn't fully let go, sometimes quietly through a screen. She may not speak to you often, she may not reach out at all, and yet your progress echoes loudly in her inner world. Because this woman measures her life not by where she's been or how far she's come, but by where you are now. Every step you take forward creates a quiet reckoning inside her. Not because you took something from her, but because your movement reminds her of the distance between who she is and who she once hoped to be. You see, Capricorn, comparison doesn't need closeness to survive. It only needs awareness. She notices when doors open for you, when recognition finds you, when your name is spoken with respect, when your path begins to clear. And in those moments, something tightens. She doesn't see the nights you doubted yourself. She doesn't see the pressure you carried silently. She doesn't see the sacrifices you made when no one was watching. She sees the outcome and skips the process. So the story she tells herself is incomplete. And incomplete stories breed resentment, not loud resentment, quiet, the kind that smiles politely, the kind that stays silent when you're celebrated, the kind that looks away when applause fills the room. Her ache is not rooted in hatred. It's rooted in comparison left unchecked. And comparison, when it settles into the heart, does something dangerous. It turns admiration into bitterness. It turns distance into fixation. It turns someone else's success into personal failure. That's why the energy feels strange. You may feel it as a sudden chill, a subtle shift when your name comes up, a silence where warmth should be. You might notice it in the way conversations change when you walk in the way attention tightens instead of opens. This isn't paranoia. It's sensitivity sharpened by growth. Because as you rise, Capricorn, your energy becomes clearer, and clarity reveals contrast. The truth is, your life reflects back to others what they are willing to work for and what they have avoided facing. And not everyone responds to that reflection with grace. Some respond with comparison. And comparison, when it goes unhealed, quietly wishes for the other person to slow down, not to disappear, just to pause, just long enough for the gap to stop widening. But here's what I want you to hear clearly. This has nothing to do with your worth, nothing to do with your deserving, nothing to do with luck. It has everything to do with how visible your perseverance has become. You are living proof that consistency compounds, that discipline pays off, that endurance creates momentum. And for someone who hasn't chosen that path, your existence becomes a mirror they didn't ask to look into. So, what do you do with this awareness? You don't shrink. You don't explain. You don't soften your success. You simply continue with integrity. You stop absorbing energy that was never meant to travel with you. You remember that your journey is not an offense, it's an invitation. An invitation others may accept or, quietly, resist. And as you move forward with this knowing, as your steps remain steady and your focus remains grounded, you'll feel a deeper calm settle in, because understanding comparison frees you from carrying it. And once that weight lifts, your path begins to feel even clearer, even quieter, even more unmistakably your own. And from that place of calm certainty, everything that follows will unfold with greater purpose than ever before. Capricorn, there's a moment when comparison changes its shape. At first, it lives quietly, almost invisibly. It notices, it measures, it keeps score in the background. But when it lingers too long, when it isn't met with honesty or self-reflection, it begins to harden. And that's when it turns into something else. Not anger, not hatred, a wish, a quiet wish that your momentum would stall, that your pace would slow, that your doors would stop opening so easily. You don't hear it spoken out loud. You feel it instead. You feel it when your achievement is met with silence, when recognition passes and the room suddenly feels still, when eyes that once followed your progress now look away. There is a particular kind of absence that speaks louder than words. It's the absence of joy where joy should naturally exist. And Capricorn, this can be unsettling because you didn't ask for competition. You didn't invite comparison. You were simply living your life, doing the work, showing up again and again, even when it was exhausting. But when someone hasn't made peace with their own timing, another person's success can feel unbearable. So, comparison grows teeth. It becomes resistance. It becomes delay. It becomes subtle interference. Not dramatic, not obvious. Just enough to drain the room. Just enough to distract your focus. Just enough to test your steadiness. You may notice it in the way conversations derail, in how enthusiasm fades, in how certain people seem to arrive right when you're standing at the edge of something meaningful. And here's where your wisdom comes in, because you don't need to name it. You don't need to defend yourself. You don't need to correct anyone's perception. What you need is space, energetic space, the kind that allows your nervous system to stay regulated, the kind that protects your clarity, the kind that keeps your inner world from being pulled into someone else's unrest. Keeping distance doesn't require coldness. It requires awareness. You can remain kind without remaining accessible. You can remain respectful without remaining available. You can honor others without handing them the authority to influence your momentum. This is maturity. And Capricorn, you are in a mature season now, one where your energy matters more than appearances, where your focus matters more than approval, where your peace matters more than being understood. You're learning that not every silence needs to be filled, not every shift needs to be explained, not every reaction needs a response. Sometimes the most powerful choice is to keep walking without turning your head, because comparison loses its grip when it no longer has access to your attention. And when you stop feeding it, it begins to dissolve. You feel lighter, clearer, more rooted in yourself. Your steps regain rhythm, your breath deepens, your intuition sharpens. You remember who you are without external commentary. And from that grounded place, something important begins to happen. Your energy stabilizes, the noise quiets, the distractions fall away, the path ahead becomes unmistakable. Not because others changed, but because you did. You learned how to protect your frequency without closing your heart. And as you continue forward with that balance, with that calm authority, you'll notice how effortlessly certain influences fade from your orbit. What remains is what can walk beside you without needing you to slow down. And in that space, where your movement feels uninterrupted and your vision feels intact, a deeper truth begins to settle in. One that will guide how you choose who has access to your loyalty, your time, and your trust from this point on. Capricorn, there comes a point where your intuition stops whispering and starts speaking clearly. Not loudly, not dramatically, just consistently. You don't wake up one day suspicious of people. That's not how this works. You wake up more aware of how certain moments feel in your body. Certain words land heavier than others. Certain conversations leave you tired instead of inspired. Certain interactions quietly dim something inside you. And slowly, you begin to notice patterns. The first thing you become aware of is the language. Not what is said, but what is missing. When you speak about something meaningful, something you've been building quietly, the response doesn't rise to meet your energy. It doesn't spark curiosity. It doesn't add fuel. It doesn't open space. Instead, it softens it. Questions arrive wrapped in hesitation. Statements arrive shaped like caution. Not enough to stop you outright. Just enough to slow your momentum. You walk away wondering why your excitement faded so quickly. Then you begin to notice timing, how certain people appear right when you are finally focused, right when your mind is clear, right when your energy feels aligned. They don't show up when things are quiet. They show up when movement is near, when something is about to shift. And instead of grounding you, they scatter your attention. Instead of supporting your focus, they pull you into side conversations, small distractions, emotional noise. It's subtle, but it's consistent. And then, Capricorn, there's the part you can't unsee once you notice it: the eyes. Words can be managed, expressions can be rehearsed, but eyes respond before the mind catches up. When your name is praised, there is a flicker. When your work is acknowledged, something tightens. When your progress is mentioned, silence fills the space where warmth should be, not hostility, discomfort. You feel it in the pause, in the delayed smile, in the way the moment moves on too quickly. And this is where I want you to pause, because this isn't about accusing anyone. It's not about labeling people as good or bad. It's about listening to your inner signals without dismissing them. Capricorn, your intuition didn't suddenly appear. It was forged through experience, through responsibility, through years of reading between the lines when words didn't match energy. What you're sensing now is not fear, it's clarity. You're no longer trying to be liked by everyone. You're trying to stay aligned with yourself. And alignment requires honesty. Honesty about how certain dynamics affect your spirit. Honesty about where your energy flows freely and where it gets blocked. This awareness is a sign of growth, not paranoia. You're not looking for enemies. You're recognizing resonance. And as you do, you begin to move differently. You share selectively. You protect your focus. You conserve your emotional energy. Not because you're closing off, but because you're becoming precise. You're learning that your vision is sacred, that your momentum is valuable, that not everyone deserves front row access to your becoming. Take a breath here. Let the knowing settle. Because this awareness is not meant to isolate you. It's meant to prepare you. Prepare you to choose wisely. Prepare you to stand firmly in your truth. Prepare you to carry your loyalty with discernment instead of obligation. And as this understanding anchors itself inside you, as your inner compass steadies, you'll feel something shift again. A deeper question rising, a quieter truth surfacing, one that asks you to look closely at who truly belongs beside you as you continue forward with strength that no longer needs permission. Capricorn, this is where the lesson deepens, not in a dramatic way, not with confrontation or endings, but with a quiet realization that settles into your bones. You have always been loyal. Not out of obligation, out of principle. When you care, you stay. When you commit, you endure. When others step back, you step in. You've carried people through seasons they couldn't have survived alone. You've offered time, energy, patience without keeping score. You've believed in people long after they stopped believing in themselves. And for a long time, you thought that was strength. In many ways, it was, but strength evolves. And right now, you're learning that loyalty without wisdom can quietly drain the very soul that offers it. This is not an easy truth for you, because you don't give lightly, you don't walk away casually, you don't replace people easily. So, when your inner world begins to question whether certain connections still belong, it can feel like guilt. Like you're failing someone, like you're changing in a way that might hurt others. But listen closely. Growth always requires recalibration. The Capricorn you are becoming cannot carry everyone who knew the earlier version of you, not because they are unworthy as people, but because alignment has shifted. Some connections were meant to teach you endurance, others were meant to show you compassion, and some were only meant to walk with you for a certain distance. This does not erase what was shared. It honors it by allowing it to end naturally. Keeping distance is not betrayal, it is discernment. It is choosing to preserve your energy instead of dispersing it everywhere out of habit or obligation. You're learning that your time is sacred, that your trust is earned slowly, that your presence carries weight, and weight must be handled with care. This lesson isn't asking you to become cold. It's asking you to become clear. Clear about who has access to your inner world. Clear about who supports your growth without needing you to dim yourself. Clear about who can stand beside you without quietly wishing you would slow down. You don't need to announce this shift. You don't need to justify it. You don't need permission. Your behavior will change naturally as your awareness sharpens. You'll share less with those who meet your openness with hesitation. You'll invest more in spaces that return energy instead of draining it. You'll stop over-explaining and start trusting your inner signals. And something remarkable happens when loyalty finds wisdom. Your relationships become lighter. Your focus becomes stronger. Your path feels less crowded and more intentional. You begin to understand that staying isn't always the highest form of love. Sometimes honoring distance is the most respectful thing you can do for both yourself and others. Take a breath here. Let go of the idea that you have to carry everyone with you. You don't. You were never meant to. You were meant to walk with those who can move at your pace without asking you to slow down or explain why you keep going. And as this understanding settles in, as loyalty transforms into something wiser, something steadier, you'll feel an inner alignment that prepares you for what comes next. A deeper sense of protection, a quieter confidence, and a growing awareness that nothing meant for you can be taken away by anyone who cannot walk beside you with a clean heart. Capricorn, there is one last thing I want you to understand. And when it settles in, everything begins to feel lighter. The figures we've been speaking about were never meant to be taken literally. They were never meant to be feared. They don't have fixed names. They don't belong to one face, one story, or one moment in your life. They move through people, through situations, through unhealed spaces. What you've been encountering has a deeper identity: jealousy, comparison. These energies borrow human expressions to reach you. They wear familiarity. They wear politeness. They wear concern. But they are not personal. They arise when light becomes undeniable, when effort turns into visible progress, when consistency begins to pay off. No one envies emptiness. No one compares themselves to what carries no weight. So, if you've felt watched, measured, quietly resisted, it's not because you're doing something wrong. It's because you're doing something real. And here is where your power returns fully. You don't need to fight this. You don't need to defend yourself. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. Your rise does the work for you. Every step forward places you outside the reach of small thinking. Every level you climb thins the air for those who thrive on comparison. Every moment you choose alignment dissolves what once felt heavy. Darkness doesn't survive in sustained light. It retreats, quietly, without announcement. Capricorn, you were never meant to explain your journey to people who didn't walk it with you. You were meant to walk it anyway. Your endurance was not accidental. Your discipline was not random. Your timing is not late. It is exact. And as you continue upward, something profound happens. The noise fades. The eyes stop watching. The whispers lose interest. Because jealousy cannot follow you where peace lives. Comparison cannot breathe where self-respect is present. You reach a place where other people's opinions no longer dictate your inner weather, where your nervous system rests, where your breath deepens, where your steps feel grounded instead of guarded. This is what protection looks like. Not walls, not isolation, clarity. So, before we close this space, I want you to sit with this for a moment. Feel the steadiness in your chest, the calm in your body, the knowing that you no longer need to look over your shoulder. And if it feels right, quietly affirm this to yourself. I will rise no matter who tries to stop me, not with force, not with resentment, but with consistency, with integrity, with a heart that remains open and a vision that remains protected. The higher you go, the less anyone can reach you. The clearer your light becomes, the less shadow survives around you. You are not here to compete, you are here to become. And nothing rooted in jealousy or comparison has the strength to interrupt a destiny that is already in motion. Stay steady, keep walking. Your path knows exactly where it's taking you, and you are already far more protected than you realize. Capricorn, before you go, let this settle. Nothing you heard tonight was meant to make you suspicious. It was meant to make you free. Free from second-guessing your intuition. Free from carrying energies that were never yours to hold. Free from shrinking yourself just to keep familiar faces comfortable. If this message resonated, it's because you already knew the truth. You didn't need confirmation. You needed permission. Permission to trust yourself again. You've been feeling the shift in your body, in your focus, in the way certain connections no longer fit the way they used to. That's not loss, that's alignment. And here's the part that may surprise you. The moment you stop worrying about who wants you to fail is the moment their influence disappears completely. Because your power was never in confrontation. It was always in continuation. Quiet, steady, unstoppable. If this message reached you at the right time, take a second and write this in the comments so others like you know they're not alone. I trust my path. And if you're feeling called to stay connected, subscribe, Not for predictions, not for fear, but for clarity, for grounding, for reminders like this when the world gets loud and your intuition needs space to breathe. Capricorn, this journey isn't ending here. What's unfolding in your life right now is only the beginning of a much bigger shift. There are more truths coming, more confirmations, more moments where everything clicks and suddenly makes sense. So, stay close, stay steady, and most importantly, stay true to what you feel in your core, because when you trust yourself, nothing meant to stop you ever will. The path ahead is clear, the message will continue, and when it does, you'll be ready. Good night, Capricorn.